Greetings, everybody. This is your favorite speaker, again, Dr. Ronald J. Brown. Our topic for today is one of the most exciting avenues of the world. And this is the famous Rodeo Drive, which claims to be the most expensive avenue in the world. Well, I'm sure the people at the Champs-Élysées in Paris, or the New Yorkers with their beloved Fifth Avenue, or the Mexicans with their Paseo de la Reforma might disagree that Rodeo Drive is the most expensive avenue in the world, but yet, here again, they can claim what they want. Well, I have always been fascinated by the grand avenues and have made YouTube programs on many of them, which you can find on YouTube. The one on the right is from Rome. And of course, there's me standing there with the Arch of Constantine behind me and the Colosseum on the right. And you see the grand avenue going through the heart of ancient Rome, with its grand monuments, its triumphal arches lining it. So the grand avenues are not just transportation, such as Fifth Avenue, but they are filled with hotels, with luxury stores, important government buildings, such as the Metropolitan Museum in New York and the Public Library, churches, St. Patrick's on Fifth Avenue, and also grand avenues are it's a stage where grand events are celebrated. Not long ago, I was in Paris for New Year's, and I went to the Champs-Élysées. Over 1 million people crowded the street to see the fireworks being set off from atop the Arc de Triomphe. Think of the victory parades down the grand avenues. We don't celebrate defeats, but when you look at grand avenues like the Champs-Élysées, you had, of course, the French victory parades. Hitler marched down when he conquered Paris, and then de Gaulle marched down with his troops. George Washington paraded down Broadway, the whole way from the Bronx, going down the length of Manhattan, where large parts of Broadway were simply a path through the trees until he got to the city, and then it was the great celebration. Back at George Washington times, there were no ticker tape machines available, but I'm sure the people were crowding and crowds were screaming and yelling that finally the British were leaving the United States. Well, Rodeo Drive also has such an exciting history. Our outline, we'll talk about the rise of California and the rise of Los Angeles, and then the creation of a magnificent avenue. Immortal Rodeo Drive, the character that it has, it will always be known as one of the places to be when you go to LA. And then going big time, its fame around the world as one of the great avenues of the world, and also one of the great avenues of LA. And LA has plenty of grand avenues. We have Hollywood Boulevard, the film capital of the world. People just sit in cafes wanting to catch a glimpse of their favorite Hollywood star. Rodeo Drive, the most expensive avenue in the world, and then Sunset Boulevard, the other side of Hollywood, the sleazy hotels, the prostitutes, the murders, the drugs, suicides. There, walk down Sunset Boulevard and you will see a very, very different side of Hollywood. But each of these three grand avenues of LA has a story to tell. So let's begin discovering the avenue. Well, as you well know, California was part of Mexico for centuries. Ever since Christopher Columbus came over in 1492 and the Spanish started expanding into Mexico, they pushed the whole way up to California along the Pacific coast. And here we see a map of the Mexican Empire as it was ruled just after it had declared its independence from Spain. And there we see the Emperor Augustin I, who ruled only briefly, but yet he really tried to put Mexico on the map as one of the new great countries of the world. Well, the United States had always eyed California as the American doorway to the Pacific. So Mexico started permitting gringos to migrate to Texas and set up farms and develop the land. The only restrictions they put is they had to convert to Catholicism, and they could not bring African slaves because Mexico had abolished slavery. Well, the Americans responded. They said, okay, well, we'll go to Sunday Mass at a Catholic church once in a while, but we're going to remain Protestants, and we will bring our slaves and just bribe the Mexican officials to turn a blind eye. Well, as in so many cases in world history, migrants and settlers become a force of their own. Don't forget, it was the French in Algeria, the French settlers, who waged a bitter war to keep Algeria French. Well, the Americans were doing the same thing in Texas. Well, eventually, there were so many gringos in Texas that they rose in revolt against Mexico, and the American army marched in and supported the independence of Texas. And in fact, we even marched into Mexico City, took the president, put a gun to his head, and said, if you want to live, you're going to sign over California, Texas, and everything in between to us. Well, incidentally, shortly after, there was the famous gold rush, when all kinds of people were rushing to San Francisco to take advantage of the vein of silver that had been discovered. By 1869, Manifest Destiny, the American dream of going from the Atlantic to the Pacific, was crowned with the Transcontinental Railroad, which was being built during the Civil War. California became a state in 1850 and participated in the Civil War alongside the northern states. So gradually, California began to grow. The area around San Francisco, the famous Imperial Valley, became the breadbasket, or I should say the fruit and vegetable basket of the United States. The gold rush had attracted tens of thousands of migrants to California, as well as large numbers of Asians who had come over to build the railroad, ended up establishing one of the largest Chinatowns in the United States. So California was on a roll. Well, Americans had always viewed California as a place where you could go and nobody knew who you were. So if you were a Jewish immigrant and migrated to the United States from Eastern Europe or Central Europe, you could very easily change your name. Nobody would know the difference. Move to California and say that your ancestors came from Italy or Hungary. That's why you have a funny accent. In fact, Horace Greeley, the New York Daily Tribune editor, wrote in 1865 that Washington, D.C. is not a place to live in. The rents are high, the food is bad, the dust is disgusting, and the morals of all these politicians are deplorable. So young men go west and grow up with the country. So this manifest destiny was not only taking control of California, but it was populating it with the many people migrating. Now, don't forget, during the Civil War time and after the Civil War, this was the high point of Irish and German and English immigration. By the 1870s and 80s, huge numbers of Italians and Eastern Europeans started migrating, and many of them saw California as the land of the future. DC, New York, Baltimore were already growing rapidly, and many people stayed, but others decided to try an adventure and go west. Well, gradually, California started growing. By 1850, when it became a state, it had 92,000 people. Los Angeles at that year had a mere 1,610. But following statehood, you can see from 1850 to 1860, almost an additional 300,000 people went there, and Los Angeles gained another 3,000, gradually reaching 1 million by 1890 or earlier in California, and Los Angeles had a respectable 50,000. 10 million by 1950, with Los Angeles approaching 2 million. By 1960, California had 15,717,000 people, good population, and Los Angeles had approximately 2.5 million people. Today, Los Angeles has approximately 4 million people, and California has 40 million. So this was a Golden State boom. Well, the 60s were a phenomenal decade for the whole country. Of course, we know the 60s as race riots, the beginning of the civil rights movement, the women's movement, gays and lesbians. The world was changing. And many people just up and left the old cities of the East Coast and the Middle America and went to the sun-drenched valleys, mountains, and beaches of California. The Mamas and the Papas' famous song, California Dreamin'. Well, in the rest of the United States, winter was coming. The leaves were brown, and the sky was getting gray. I've been for a walk on a winter's day, thinking of New York or Chicago or Boston or Philadelphia. But if I was in LA, I'd be safe and warm. That's the place to be. Leave behind the winter and the cold and the congestion of the East Coast and the North and go to California. And even if you can't go to California, at least dream about being in California, where all the evil things would fall out of your life. Well, many people did go to California. We know about the famous Haight-Ashbury district in San Francisco, where anything went. Hippies were going, drugs, gays and lesbians, husbands running away from a nagging wife and 15 kids, wives running away from an abusive husband and 15 kids. This was a new utopia. A perfect society was emerging, free of all of the old history of the East Coast, free of the factories of north to Chicago and Detroit. It was going to be a new civilization where everyone would be free. And so California was booming. People were doing more than dreaming of California. They were actually going there, as my oldest brother did, enjoying this new civilization. Well, it wasn't just San Francisco that was forging itself into the future, but it was also Los Angeles, which in Spanish means the angels. It was growing. Well, Los Angeles is flat, whereas San Francisco is hilly. And so Los Angeles attracted businesses. It became the banking, industrial, business capital of California. And of course, it marked itself with its towering skyscrapers, freeways. It was a city built for the age of the automobile. By 1960, it had 2.5 million people. Today, it is over 4 million, a booming city, attracting migrants from all over the world, from South America, from Europe, from Asia, and from every region of the United States and Canada. Majestically placed against the hills, as you can see on the right, a beautiful setting with beaches at your front door and the mountains rising out your back door. Well, by the 1960s, the world was changing. The Atlantic world, which had dominated world history for so long, was coming to an end. The East Coast cities of the United States, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Charleston, these cities, along with the cities of Western Europe, were losing out to a whole new collection of cities that were emerging along and around the Pacific coast. We see the Ring of Fire. This is probably the most volcanically active place in the world. In fact, that's part of California. Just like if you live in Chicago, you're going to have wind. If you live in Detroit, you're going to have snow. Well, if you live in San Francisco, you're going to have earthquakes. But hey, it's worth it. So all along the coast of South America, Mexico, California, Alaska, and down through Japan, down Indonesia, Malaysia, New Zealand. This is the ring of volcanoes. But by the 1960s, this area was also known as the Pacific Rim, with new cities and countries emerging from the ruins of the Second World War. Cities like Tokyo, Shanghai in China, Singapore, Indonesia were emerging. Taiwan, one of the little tigers. The Pacific Rim was the new future of humanity. Brand new cities, not the old crumbling subway of New York City, but brand new, efficient, sparkling subways were being built along the Pacific Rim. Business was booming. The trans-Pacific trade was on the upswing. East Asia, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore, other countries, cities in Australia, New Zealand were exporting to North America as well as Latin America. Lima, Peru was booming. Cities, Pacific cities of Mexico were booming. And trade was only going to grow. Once again, It is the Pacific world by the 1960s that was the herald of the future. No longer the old Atlantic of Europe and the East Coast, but it was a new civilization which was emerging. Trade with the blue countries, everything from Russia, Vladivostok is on the Pacific, China, India, Japan, Indonesia, Pakistan, Singapore, Hong Kong, Thailand. We're doing a booming trade with the United States and Canada. See the trade of the world's regions. The two largest areas are the United States and Asia. And so loads of books were being written. Asia Rising, Why America Will Prosper as Asia's Economies Boom. How to Get Filthy Rich in Rising Asia. Again, a novel, but sometimes people are more inspired by the visions of a novel than they are by the facts of the Wall Street Journal. China was on a boom, following its opening to capitalism, where the United States and China were no longer locked in the Cold War of communism versus capitalism. The Chinese remained communist, but they opened up the economy to capitalism. The four Asian tigers, South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, were booming. They were buying cars. The middle class was purchasing everything that the United States could produce. The United States was importing from China, and China and Asia was importing food and machinery, technology from the United States. Even Latin America was starting to join in. Chile, Peru, Colombia, the countries of South America, Mexico, all border on the Pacific. And even Brazil started having huge trade ties with China because they could simply go around South America and they were in the Pacific. So that's where Rodeo Drive comes into the picture. The trans-Pacific traffic was not just of goods, but it was also of people. And Los Angeles was staking out its claim to be the most glamorous city on the Pacific Rim. It was the gateway to the entire North American market. Long Beach became one of the largest harbors on the Pacific Ocean. Well, gradually in the 1960s, people like Fred Hayman recognized that Los Angeles needs a Grand Avenue. It needs a Fifth Avenue, but combined with a Broadway. It needed a Champs-Élysées, a Paseo de la Reforma, a Nevsky Prospect in St. Petersburg. It needed an Unter den Linden of Berlin or the Via Imperiale of Rome. And so he set out to transform a perfectly ordinary street called Rodeo Drive into the luxury shopping street of the world. Hence its claim to be the most expensive street in the world. Well, in 1961, at 273 Rodeo Drive, he started convincing the great sellers and dealers of luxury items to relocate to this new street. Georgia, the Italian provider of luxury goods and clothing and jewelry, opened its store in 1961. And that began the avalanche of the sellers of luxury goods to Rodeo Drive. Now, Rodeo Drive is relatively short compared to the other grand avenues of the world. Actually, it's only 2 miles long. But when you look at the map on the left, you see it goes from Santa Monica Boulevard the whole way down to Wilshire Boulevards. And alongside of it is one of the tourist guides of where the luxury shops are. Giorgio Armani, Hermes, Hugo Boss, Chanel, Brooks Brothers, Beverly Hills for Men of Theodore's, Lacoste, Yves Saint Laurent, Van Cleef's and Arpels. These were the stores which gradually migrated to the new Rodeo Drive. Actually, it wasn't a slow migration. I should use the word, it was a mad rush to stake out your place along the 200, the 300, or the 400 block. Very short, 2 blocks long, with a little bit at the bottom, but filled with every store you could imagine. One of the early places that really started putting Rodeo Drive on the map as a drive of distinction was when Anderton Court in 1953 was designed by the greatest American architect, Frank Lloyd Wright. And you see the emphasis on horizontal influence of the Great Plains of Wisconsin, where Frank Lloyd Wright was from. And Los Angeles, as I mentioned earlier, is a flat city. It is bordered on one side by the mountains and on the other side by the Pacific Ocean, but it is one giant flat land, unlike San Francisco. And so he brought the great expanses of the Midwest and built one of his major buildings on Rodeo Drive. Well, every store had to have its presence. Europeans, French, Italians, British, New York stores like Brooks Brothers all started moving to Rodeo Drive. The names were recognized. Giorgio Armani with his eau de parfum, eau de toilette for men and for women, once again leaving their mark on Rodeo Drive. Tiffany, always associated with Fifth Avenue, opened its Rodeo Drive store. And once again, bringing a touch of New York with their window. You see the Empire State Building, but yet it is another example of the globalization of Tiffany, where it was no longer just a New York purveyor of luxury goods, but Los Angeles as well. And so Tiffany left its mark on this avenue at 210 North Rodeo Drive. Van Cleef's and Arpels, magnificent corner store, a French company established in 1896. And when the Americans needed to know how to dress, how to wear fashions, how to dine, the French were always there to give their answer. I just finished watching The Gilded Age, the HBO series. And there you see the growing French influence in the New York Fifth Avenue high society. A big debate on how the table should be arranged, which fork goes where. And the victor, of course, was the French table setting. Even many restaurants only publish their menu in French. And so they arrived in 1969 at Rodeo Drive. There you see the corner of Rodeo Drive and Dayton Way. Magnificent corner store. This, you have the maximum amount of display windows with a monumental door facing the intersection. Vidal-Sassoon, a British company, arrived in 1970 with its own distinctive store with its giant arches and again display window, hair color, all kinds of cosmetics for women who wanted to be of importance. There's even the movie Vidal-Sassoon, how one man changed the world with a pair of scissors. I love this portion where it says, this is one hair appointment you won't want to miss. So Rodeo Drive was becoming very often, quickly, the fashion center. What is the hairdo of the day? Remember when Lady Di was at her prime? Everybody wanted to have the Lady Di haircut. Remember the great TV series, The Golden Girls? Well, for the first time, women's fashion started catering to older women. Everything from the grandmother down to Blanche. It seemed that every time one of these women would go into the bathroom, she'd be wearing some beautiful outfit. But for some reason, when she came out of the bathroom, she had changed clothes and was featuring another magnificent outfit. Aldo Gucci, 1968. Now, a lot of these stores not only have magnificent display windows and very striking architecture, but even at night, the windows are illuminated. There's no better place than Rodeo Drive to go window shopping. Absolutely spectacular displays of light. And of course, when it comes to Christmas, you have the whole big window displays featuring Santa Claus, definitely overdressed with his red coat and hat, and reindeer would probably die of the heat of Los Angeles, but still, I guess they're willing to make the sacrifice for an appearance on Rodeo Drive. Bijan Pakzad, who was a Persian immigrant, opened his store in 1976, and he definitely claimed that it would be the most expensive store in the world. Look at the sports cars, the Bugatti on the right. This was what Rodeo Drive was all about. Well, Persians, many of them, Iranians, migrated to Los Angeles because the climate was very similar to balmy Iran. In fact, many people nicknamed Los Angeles as Los Irangeles. Some people say it was Los Tehrangeles after the capital of Iran, Tehran. Large numbers of Armenians also migrated to Los Angeles. And there have even been major politicians who migrated to this city. And very often the Persians who migrated and the Armenians very often had money and they were looking for an investment. And rather than investing in the New York stock market or industries in Chicago or Detroit, they turned to the window on the Pacific Rim as the investment area of the future. Everybody was going. You see, Michael Jordan. Well, if you didn't have a display in one of the big famous stores on Rodeo Drive, then you were a nobody. Well, the people of Rodeo Drive take very seriously their reputation of being the most expensive street in the world. They are not just selling products, they are marketing an elite lifestyle. What perfume, what haircut, what suit, what dress, what heels you are wearing this season is very often determined by the stores along Rodeo Drive. In fact, to protect this elite reputation, the merchants of Rodeo Drive established the Rodeo Drive Committee. On the right, you see the Rodeo Drive Committee and its board of directors. I mean, it is, as you can see, it is very much women-oriented, but the men are there as well. They buy the sports cars. In California, the cultural lifestyle there is that men have to be as elegantly dressed. They are the ones also who have facelifts and who have tummy tucks, go to the gym to maintain a certain style. And many people refer to Rodeo Drive as not just a street, but they refer to it as a corporation in and of itself. And so that was the retailers, the hoteliers, the landowners, who are members of the Rodeo Drive Committee, engage, share dialogue, and help shape the present and future of this iconic, world-famous shopping destination. So this is very serious business. Rodeo Drive is not just a street lined with stores, but every square inch of the drive is meticulously cared for, from the correct collecting of garbage, parking laws, its police force to make sure that quality remains top-notch. Harry Winston moved there in 1977. He could not resist the allure. Well, we know of Harry Winston in New York on Fifth Avenue. In fact, I met Harry many times because he would go to Geneva and stay at the Hotel Richemont for the Christie's auctions every year. And since I worked at the hotel, very often we would sit in the lobby and chat, and he would tell me stories of the diamond industry. Well, of course, Rodeo Drive is linked to Hollywood movies. And here you see Marilyn Monroe in her famous movie, Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. Well, what does she utter when she's totally flustered about which diamonds to wear to a particular event? She utters the immortal words, "Harry Winston, where are you?" And Harry further developed his Fifth Avenue reputation by claiming to be the jeweler to the stars. So once again, all of these big avenues of Los Angeles are linked. Rodeo Drive is linked to Hollywood. Hollywood is linked to the seedier side of Sunset Boulevard. So this is the growing globalization, the world fame of Rodeo Drive. And they are definitely keeping up with it. Here we see the 1983 Rodeo collection. A whole city center with stores, with restaurants, once again, taking advantage of the wonderful climate. It's open air restaurants, walkways with trees. This is a 45-store shopping mall. And even the name, the Rodeo Collection, you think you're going into an art museum with its famed collection. So it's not a store. It is an elite collection of the finest products for an elite global population. Well, the men are not neglected. Every Father's Day, there is the famous Concours de l'Élégance, which began in 1998. Another one of these well-planned and thought-out events to maintain the prestige, the global fame of Rodeo Drive. See the beautiful cars on the right, and a more exotic sports car, I guess you would call it that, on the left. All of these pictures, you never see it raining in LA. It is sun-drenched. And so this is another one of the newer events organized by the Rodeo Committee to maintain, to enhance, and to spread globally the leading role of Rodeo Drive. Rodeo Drive has its own walk of style dating from 2003. And here we see the father of Rodeo Drive, Fred Hayman, got one of the very first plaques on the sidewalk. But it is the walk of style. It is Giorgio Armani. It is Ferragamo, Gianni, Versace. These are Cartier and Princess Grace. Bulgari, Burberry. These are the great purveyors of luxury items. And so just like you have the Hollywood Walk of Fame, you have Harlem's Walk of Fame in front of the Apollo Theater, so you have your Walk of Style along Rodeo Drive. Gucci, 1990, opened its store on Rodeo Drive, and of course, advertising itself. Now, you can buy a knockoff Gucci bag anywhere in New York or any other city, but now you have to get a certificate of authenticity to show that your Gucci bag is a Gucci bag. I have a friend, he's from Africa, and he sells knockoff Gucci bags in front of the Metropolitan Museum on Fifth Avenue. Well, as soon as they came out with certificates of authenticity, he brought his brother over from Nigeria, who was a printer. And so he sells bags on one carpet on front of the museum, And just beside him, you get your fake certificate of authenticity. So it's keeping business in the family. Famous movie with Lady Gaga, The House of Gucci. Wonderful. And Al Pacino and Janet Leno. I mean, very, very famous people. Prada has its store, and again, architecture is important. This is a Rem Koolhaas building. Once again, Rodeo Drive does not hearken back to European style, French Renaissance or Italian Renaissance or European architecture. It is architecture of the future. And it is once again showing that to be a member of the elite, you have to have the right scent, the right shoes, the right bag with certificate of authenticity, the right car, the right hairdo, really determining what the world views as beautiful, stylish. Well, Rodeo Drive, like Fifth Avenue and Broadway and so many other big streets, Champs-Élysées, have gone global. Dubai, which is probably one of the largest shopping destinations in the world today, has its own Rodeo Drive. In fact, many people say that the name Dubai comes from the two words, do, buy everything in sight. When I was there walking around, I mean, you saw jumbo jets arriving from Russia, from China, from Africa, from everywhere in the Middle East, Europe, America, Japan, Hong Kong, buying everything in sight. Restaurants catering to the mystique of Rodeo Drive. This is the Rodeo Drive restaurant in Dubai. Once again, just the name, Rodeo Drive, captivates people's imaginations. And Rodeo Drive has only accelerated its domination of luxury items. The very famous Rodeo Drive Festival of Watches and Jewelry. Here again, using the name Rodeo Drive to sell and market some of the most elegant Swiss-made watches, tiaras, jewels. One of these big events, as you can see, the one particular year was in October 10th to 13th, brings in hundreds of thousands of merchants, hundreds of thousands of purchasers from around the world. Scruples, a book by Judith Krantz. She has written so many blockbuster books. I've never read one, but still, she even places her book Scruples and the movie on Rodeo Drive. The story of a young widow who inherits a vast fortune and opens a boutique on where else? Rodeo Drive. It was a TV miniseries of 1980. A novel with a passion for clothes, wrote the New Yorker. So this is another example of the mystique of Rodeo Drive, saying that where else would a woman with too much money and nothing to do go to set up her boutique? Pretty Woman, another movie with Richard Gere and Julia Roberts. A beautiful prostitute goes shopping on Rodeo Drive and is snubbed by salespeople who are dismayed at her appearance. Well, the very next day, her client, which is a nice word for customer, takes her out on a shopping spree, eventually returning to the shop that snubbed her to remind the clerks of the purchases they could have overseen. Well, shopping binges would never be the same. So if you want a good, entertaining movie, watch Pretty Woman. Rodeo Drive also has become the enemy in the eyes of many people. After the George Floyd murder riots, you had the riots on major streets, and Rodeo Drive was targeted with a horrendous demonstration against the powers that be, and it targeted the rich as being more concerned about preserving their elegant lifestyles than helping the poor or those who are minorities. So like every grand avenue, it is a stage for demonstrations, for protests, and for massive celebrations. Go to it when they're having their watch and jewelry festival, and you will never see so many people thronging the streets, flashing off their jewelry, their clothes, their fashions. It is really a fashion parade 24 hours a day. It is a tourist destination. You can take guided tours where they reveal the secrets of Rodeo Drive revealed. Like every city, tourism industry in Los Angeles is a major industry. I was, for many years, a licensed New York City travel guide. I was a tour guide in Boston when I was a student at Harvard. This is big business. And the more secrets you can reveal, the more exotic stories, sleazy stories, scandals you can reveal or even make up, the more you earn in tips. So the tourism industry along Hollywood Boulevard, Sunset Boulevard, Rodeo Drive, neighborhoods of Los Angeles is a booming business. Another very popular place where you can just walk and then sit down once again out in the sun is the Daisy. And we say it is the Daisy Discotheque. It is a restaurant. And when people go to places like this, very often they want to have the match box that you see on the left, or they keep their stub from the restaurant. I have boxes of things like this, where whenever I be in Paris and go to the Georges V for tea, when friends invited me, because I could never afford it, well, I would always pick up match the boxes, or I'd pick up even napkins and bills as just a souvenir. Sometimes you become very wealthy, or they become very worth a lot of money when a particular restaurant goes out of business or is destroyed. Then these little tidbits can take on a value. Well, the other side of Rodeo Drive, the other side of Hollywood is, of course, Sunset Boulevard. So behind every grand street, you get another story. O.J. Simpson murder trial, where Nicole Brown Simpson, they go into every detail of their lives. And of course, People magazine or books, when they talk about anybody who is anybody, they have to have them placed for some major event on the Rodeo Drive. Rodeo Drive, another famous book by Barney Leeson, where it is a street where lives are bought and sold, an enclave of the super rich where passion has its price. If Beverly Hills is the heart of Hollywood, then Rodeo Drive is its pacemaker. Barney Leeson does a surgeon's skillful job in peeling away the sham and hypocrisy that keep the town alive. That was a review written by Harold Robbins. Well, the book itself describes Rodeo Drive as a 2-mile strip of prime California real estate where the world's most glamorous and amorous come to spend their endless nights dancing chick to chick with dazzling lights. Here against the outrageous decadence of Beverly Hills, its hopscotch bedrooms and grand estates, posh restaurants, and luxurious hotels. This is what you expect to hear when you see the two words Rodeo Drive. Well, another protest was the famous Rage Against the Machine, which was a group of musicians who you see on the right protesting the divide between the wealthy and the impoverished of America. The subtitle down at the bottom says, How the Digital Revolution is Accelerating Innovation, Driving Productivity, and Irreversibly Transforming Employment and the Economy. Well, Rage Against the Machine said, yes, but it's also making the rich richer and the poor poorer. One of their famous songs was Down Rodeo. So now I'm rolling down Rodeo with a shotgun. These people ain't seen a brown-skinned man since their grandparents bought one. So once again, Rodeo Drive is a scene of protest. The absolutely phenomenally wealthy being opposed by the millions of people being left behind by the economic boom that is the United States. The shopping spree in the movie, just go with it. Another movie I didn't bother to watch, but it is with Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston. Here again, any shopping spree must include Rodeo Drive. All kinds of things to do. Shopping paradise on Rodeo Drive. Get your guidebook. 7 free things to do on Rodeo Drive. Another book, Shop Los Angeles, LA. Well, of course, all the signs show Rodeo Drive. Here again, when you go, I'm leaving in 2 weeks for LA. So, but I will only do the free things. I'm not going to go on a shopping spree, but still, it's what people go there to do. Well, thank you for joining me. This is again Ronald Brown logging off. If you have comments, just feel free to send me an email at ronbrownmedia@gmail.com. On the right, you see me at another one of the grand avenues of the world. This is the Paseo de la Reforma, where I will be spending the month of January this year, another one of the great avenues of the world. So, avenues, part of American and global civilization. Even if you build a brand new city, such as the Brazilians did when they built Brasilia in the middle of the forest, it had a grand avenue. The emperors of ancient China had their grand avenue going from the bell tower in the north of Beijing down to the Temple of Heaven, miles down the Grand Avenue. The Grand Avenue of the pharaohs in Egypt and Luxor, miles long, lined with sphinx and palaces and temples, where the pharaohs would emerge from their palaces, process along the Grand Avenue to perform the rituals necessary for the maintenance of the Egyptian rivers and water and agriculture. So grand avenues are more than streets. They are stages for grand events, places for glorious architecture, and places to be seen and to see. So, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the talk, and I hope to see you sometime in the near future. So, thank you very much, and I hope to see you in the near future for another exciting lecture. So, enjoy your day. Bye-bye.